I'm so happy to be here, ladies and gentlemen, once again. And thanks for inviting me. I just want to say this about the fine ladies and gentlemen here at MEFEFCO. You guys, I can't think of any other organization in America that's ever invited me twice. So thank you. You guys are very special. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you all. You all are like my extended family. And thanks for coming up and shaking my hand and reminding me that I had met many of you before when I was here. I believe it was in the summertime last year. It was a wonderful experience, and it was my honor to be there then, and it's my honor to be here again with you today. As you know, I don't mince words too much, so from the title of my speech, you'll kind of get a little flavor for where I'm coming from today. Hiroshima, Grosse Pointe, and Detroit. Who dropped the bomb on who? Okay? So that just kind of gives you a little flavor where I'm going. This is circa 1967. I was about 5 years old. My younger brother and sister and I were literally bursting with anticipation as we sat by our living room window. My mother had made one of her rare trips to that enchanted place, a marvelous and exquisite land called Grosse Pointe. All of her previous trips to this wonderful little village, a land flowing with milk and honey, or so we thought, she would always bring back truly beautiful and unique items, things that she couldn't have bought at stores in Detroit. Where was this delightful land? Where was Grosse Pointe a mythical place? Could Grosse Pointe exist for a little ghetto black boy like me? Eventually, my mother would take us on shopping trips to Grosse Pointe. Only then were we sure that Grosse Pointe was a real place. Other hints I had was a good friend of my mother, an uneducated but very wise woman we called Aunt Ruby. She had been a maid to some wealthy families in Grosse Pointe. Through the years, her employers gave her many exquisite items in gratitude for her exemplary service to them. Some of those items Aunt Ruby gave to my mother. My third experience about Grosse Pointe came from my sixth grade teacher, Mrs. Vaught, who lived in Grosse Pointe. By now, I wasn't at all surprised about the good things and good people coming from this place, for Mrs. Vaught was my favorite teacher ever. This woman did things as a teacher in the 1960s and 70s that would have gotten teachers today immediately fired. She treated all students, for example, black and white, exactly the same. No damn affirmative action. If you were smart, you were praised. If you were intellectually challenged, you were encouraged to study harder. During 1983 to 1985, I was a member of the Grosse Pointe Symphony. I played French horn just years before I went to law school. As one was driving along Jefferson going east, one would be confronted by utter signs of devastation, block after block of bombed out, burned down, barred up, boarded up buildings, residential areas with only 5 to 10 houses on each block, where 40 years ago 30 to 40 homes were. Potholes that could break the axle on your car, people roaming the street like zombies, begging for money to buy cigarettes, drugs, alcohol, women selling their emaciated, shriveled up, crack-addicted bodies with no hope and utter despair. When you crossed Alta Road, you were immediately struck by the stark difference between neighborhoods. In Grosse Pointe, the old stately homes are magnificent. The yards are immaculate. There are no loiterers around, no gangs running wild in the streets, no graffiti, no potholes, no security bars on the homes or businesses, no vacant lots turned into mini junkyards. No drug dealers, no drug addicts. Police are visible. None of the ills that have plagued big cities across America for decades. Why the stark contrast between Detroit and Grosse Pointe? Two neighboring cities. Of course, the Democrat Socialist Party and the Marxist academics will have a host of excuses. Here are a few. Grosse Pointe is all white and Detroit is all black. Grosse Pointe is small white-collar suburb. Detroit is large blue-collar inner city. Grosse Pointe has more money for better schools and city services. Excuse me. Grosse Pointe isn't as old as Detroit. Grosse Pointe has thieves, drug addicts, and crime just like Detroit. It just hides them better. And on and on. Excuse me. While Grosse Pointe is virtually all white, about 93.3% are white, but it is represented by people of all racial groups. I live there. My son, my daughter, my wife. And so the population there is about 3.3% black, and it's growing. Grosse Pointe is a white-collar suburb. Detroit is a blue-collar city. This construction is due more to history and expediency rather than conspiratorial racial animus against black people. Grosse Pointe's north and south border with Detroit is Mack Avenue. I have friends that live on the Detroit side. Most of their homes date back to the 1920s and 1930s era. These homes were built at the same time as those in Grosse Pointe. Yet Grosse Pointe homes have been meticulously maintained for some 100 years in some cases, while homes in Detroit, neighborhood called East English Village, just a few hundred feet from Grosse Pointe, in the same era of architectural design, many of them now lay in despair, targets of vandals, drug dens, or abandoned altogether. Grosse Pointe has virtually no murder. I think it was one murder in 2005, and I think a recent one since then. What's that guy's name? Sherry, yeah. It's so rare you know the guy's name when they do that. Detroit is not only the reigning murder capital, well, at least was, now I think Chicago has taken over, but according to Forbes magazine of a few years ago, it was called the most miserable city in America. In conclusion, what has this tale of two cities revealed to us? Grosse Pointe versus Detroit. What are the causes that have given us savageness and utter despair of Detroit right next door to this idyllic utopian qualities of Grosse Pointe? Regarding Detroit's self-genocide, you can't logically blame all this on the white man, or on the lack of money, institutional racism, or discrimination. Any rational person, any logical-minded man, woman here must concede that Detroiters should at least shoulder some burden of blame for the plight based upon their own individual life choices. Secondly, liberal progressives and the failed Marxist socialist policies dating back to Theodore Roosevelt, who I'm unfortunately and sad to say was the first progressive president. And he was a what? A Republican. So now you're beginning to see the Republican and Democrat, in many cases down through history, are two sides of the same coin. It took me a long time to come to that understanding, but it's true. That's why we need the Tea Party more than ever, and I appreciate your comments about the Tea Party and people to stand up on principle, like our good friend here, Janice Jane. Let's give her a hand. That's a woman that stands up for principle, and she paid the ultimate price for it. And I know God has some plans for her in the future that's going to be bigger than what she did in Troy. You just stay faithful to the Lord, Janice, and we just love you here. Detroiters should shoulder some of the blame, but liberals and progressives and their failed Marxist socialist policies dating back to Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Lyndon Baines Johnson, and currently under Barack Hussein Obama, have utterly decimated big cities across America by purposely aborting America's can-do spirit, rugged individualism, and self-initiative. Socialist programs from the welfare state that freely give to 13, 14, and 15-year-old girls to have babies out of wedlock and to keep the father out of the home Social Security we give to our senior citizens who are, in some situations, are killing businesses because of the high pension plans that they have to pay. For example, Chrysler and General Motors, they had to be bailed out. General Motors said they were paying over 50% of their profits just to pay pensions. We can't live in a society like that. Medicare benefits, robbing society of their wisdom by retiring at 55 years old. That's when a lot of people are hitting the best years of their life. But now we have systems where either they're retiring on their own or they're being forced to retire. But we need their wisdom in the marketplace to help build this country and keep us strong. I truly believe that the difference between Detroit and Grosse Pointe resides within the transcendent qualities Justice Clarence Thomas, who wrote his book, My Grandfather's Son. He called his grandfather who raised him Daddy. And his grandfather taught him tough love that transformed Justice Thomas from a boy into a real man. His daddy's Spartan discipline that cared enough for him to look into Clarence Thomas' eye and into his brother Myers' eye and says, the damn party's over. That's what we need nowadays, America. We need a politician to say no more free lunches, no more welfare, no more of this Obamacare and all of these fascist socialist programs that are killing this country. Enough is enough. In conclusion, will Detroit come back from economic ruin, union thuggery, welfare dependency, broken families, teenage mothers, gang violence, bombed out neighborhoods, and liberal fascism of the Democrat Party, who has run Detroit into the ground for 50 years, who have kept millions of black people in shackles on the Democrat Party plantation? How long? Or will Detroit's new emergency financial manager, Mr. Attorney Kevin Orr, be able to save this one great city, this once great city, from financial ruin? Or will Detroit be forced into a judge-mandated Chapter 9 bankruptcy? Time will tell, but let us keep praying and let us keep hoping for a brighter America. Thank you. Before I conclude with the second part of my speech on Hiroshima, comparing Hiroshima and Detroit, I want to take a little surprise here and have my son come up for a few minutes, and he has a little speech that he would like to give to you. Oh, well, I was, as I was preparing today, I was praying, and God just said, let him speak. And I said, yes, why not? We got to help our generation, because they got to be the ones to get us out of this mess that Obama's done. And this is his first speech, and I'm proud. I couldn't think of a better group of people for him to make his debut speech than in front of the MEFEFCO Tea Party. Thank you very much. Great job, son. Thank you. We're almost done. You guys have been really patient, and I won't try your patience much longer. But the last part of my speech here, Hiroshima versus Detroit, who dropped the bomb on who? Whew. It's personal to me. You can probably hear it in my voice, because nobody likes giving a speech about negativism, about where they were born, where they were raised, where they was educated. But it brings out a righteous indignation in me, because I know Detroit, I know its history. I studied its history for many decades. I've written 7 books and over 24 law review articles extolling the virtues of the founding fathers and of Detroit. I believe in Detroit. I'm one of its greatest adherents. And because I have that faith in Detroit, faith in America, I will not give up on Detroit. And I know you guys won't either. Yeah. And to this, I want to just say about Hiroshima versus Detroit. In order to shorten the war, and to save millions of Allied lives. During World War II, President Harry Truman ordered an atomic bomb to be dropped on Japan, which completely destroyed the Japanese city of Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. And by the end of that year, up to 140,000 people had died. Almost half of the city's population in total. Some 200,000 more would eventually die from the effects of radiation. With that said, I want to just play two interesting movie clips you might have seen before, but just indulge me, and then we'll wrap things up. Thank you.
Hiroshima, Showa 20年. Hiroshima in 1945. Detroit, 1940年から1950年まで. Detroit in the 1940s and 1950s. Hiroshima, ima. Hiroshima now. Detroit from now. Detroit to ima.戦争はどっちの国が勝ったのか? どっちの国が平和を勝ち取ったのか? So who won the war? Well, America won the war, but who won the peace? Japan, obviously. America is great at war, great at killing, great at destroying. America sucks at peace.
There is a propaganda war that is beginning now. And I don't believe that it is intended to actually reap anything from the harvest for a while. Until gas prices go up or your food prices or more people lose their jobs. It will be important that you know the truth now. Our old friend Van Jones has been talking about the American dream a lot lately, which is interesting coming from an unrepentant communist. He even organized a nationwide rally to promote it over the weekend. It's an expression we're all pretty comfortable with, right? The American dream. But we should probably define the American dream. Because what's happening now is another progressive hijacking. The American dream that you dream about is the same opportunity for all. Give me a shot. That's what Martin Luther King talked about. Give me a chance. Progressives have made it about the same outcome for all. Al Sharpton recently said it. That's what Martin Luther King's dream was. The same stuff in everybody's house. Houses for all. Guaranteed jobs for all. Guaranteed food and income for all. Well, that's not the American dream I think most Americans even recognize. That's so far beyond a progressive dream. But how has that progressive dream worked out so far? Fortunately for America, who has to choose, we have numerous examples of the kind of dream progressive policies lead to. I want to show you this city. Tell me what city you think this is. You recognize it? I'll give you one clue and you won't believe it. It's a city that, rumor had it, would be uninhabitable for centuries to come because of radiation. This is Hiroshima. August 6, 1945, an atomic bomb completely destroyed almost 70% of the buildings. And by the end of the year, up to 140,000 had died. Look at the city then. Almost half of the city's population in total died. Some 200,000 or more would eventually die from the effects. Now, look at Hiroshima today. It's not the wreckage. What happened? Well, people decided that they weren't going to allow their city to be destroyed forever. Yes, the government came in and helped rebuild the city, but what else could have rebuilt from that destruction? They needed help from the government, but it was the people embracing the free market system that revitalized Hiroshima. Now, it's Hiroshima. Let me show you another city. Here's a city that when Hiroshima looked like it did in destruction, this city looked like this. It was thriving. It's Detroit, Michigan. But take a look at Detroit today. One city embraced the free market system and the entrepreneurial spirit. The other embraced progressive policies and corrupt government and unions and companies that weren't allowed to fail, and they should have failed because they stunk on ice. They begged for a bailout and got one, and the union bosses did their share too. Whereas Hiroshima has nearly quadrupled in size since the attack. Not so much with Detroit. Less than 50% of Detroit's peak population of 1.8 million in 1950 still live in the city. 36% of Detroit's residents live in poverty. Detroit's poverty rate is more than double than that as the entire U.S. as a whole. 81% of Detroit's public school students qualified for free and reduced price lunches in 2009. 81%. As far as education, about 42% of Detroit's public school students don't even graduate. Half. Now, the problem for the left is they can't say, oh, Detroit inherited this problem from the big evil George Bush. These are the failed policies of his corporate cronies and the fat cat rich friends. Really? Democrats have been in power for Detroit for over 50 years. No, Mr. Beck, it was the big three auto corporations that ruled Detroit. That's what killed Motown. I want you to know that those companies sucked. But it had nothing to do with Democratic policies or corruption, like that of convicted former Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick. And it had certainly nothing to do with the unions there. Right. The unions were only there for the workers. Well, no, not according to Richard Trumka, the head of the AFL-CIO. He cares about you? Watch.
I got into the labor movement not because I wanted to negotiate wages. I got into the labor movement because I saw it as a vehicle to do massive social change to improve the lots of people. That's why I got into the labor movement.
So it's not about your wages. It's about the progressive ideas. He believes in those ideas. Oh, you can blame Ford and GM. They're bad corporate policies. And those policies, because of the progressives, weren't allowed to reset. Nobody allowed them to fail. Bad policies and union deals helped rot this city from the core. This is the path, America, that we are now embracing. We are embracing now a country that loves corruption, special favors, union deals, and big unions, and bailing out businesses that should have failed because they were run poorly. This city did what our country is doing now, embracing all the policies that led to this. But it doesn't have to be this way. But you, the citizen, the shareholder in the United States of America, has to make the choice. Our founders said that you could not live in a country and have freedom if the citizenry was uninformed. A lot of people say that what I tell you is just nothing but lies. I encourage you every night, do your own homework. You must be informed. We have to stop the corruption. We have to convince the American people that what happened in Detroit and cities like it can happen here in America and will. And we have to know and be able to show them the proof of who it was that led them.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for having me. It's been my pleasure. I'm sorry that my message was a little on the downer side, but I hope that you saw a leitmotif, a theme through what I was trying to say of hope for a brighter tomorrow. I was taught long ago, as long as you live in America and are willing to work hard, that there's always hope, no matter what kind of Marxist, socialist, progressive demagogue is in Washington, D.C., messing up things. He won't be there forever. There'll be a brighter day where we'll rebuild from the ashes, just like Hiroshima rebuilt from the ashes. Wasn't that stunning, those pictures of Hiroshima? It looked like Manhattan. It was just magnificent. And they did that in less than 70 years. It's just amazing what people can do when they have a will to work, a mind to work, and that's what we have to do. Well, with the few remaining minutes that I have, I'd like to just, before opening up the floor for questions, I just want to say, I didn't bring any books, but if you want to buy my books, they're on my website, elliswashingtonreport.com, and I have some cards there at the end of that table. Please take 2, 3, 4, pass them out to your friends, especially young people. You see with my son Stone, I'm trying to push him out there. When his sister gets a little older, she's 11 now, and she's a little bit more feistier, so I'm going to try to get her out there too, but in a few years. But we got to reach the younger generation, ladies and gentlemen, because we're not going to be around forever, and we got to clean up this mess that Obama and the Democrat Socialist Party has wreaked upon this once great nation. But I believe together we can do it. Don't you? We can do it together. So any questions? And if you have something for my son too, I'll bring him up here. Yes, sir. Okay.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Well, we will end that. Thank you very much, and invite me back anytime, and I'll bring my better half with some of his friends.